Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Finance Committee meeting for Thursday, the 1st of June. Tonight we'll be reviewing a special revenue funds, including parking, airport, conservation property, revolving loan, golf arena, and solid waste, as well as the enterprise funds of water and wastewater. So, floor is yours. Thank you. Actually, before we do that, does everybody have a chance to look at the minutes for May 25th?
Yeah.
Move approval.
Motion.
Second.
Motion made to second to approve the minutes of May 25th. Is there any changes? Seeing all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion's adopted. Minutes are adopted. Mr. Manager.
Your Honor, members of the council, or Finance Committee in this case, you want to be on agenda item number 4. Is on the agenda for today's meeting. And that first item, the parking fund. And you want to start on page of that book, and of course this is all online, on page 154. So look at revenues first. Revenues, fiscal year 23 revenues are projected to be on target with budget, and fiscal year 23, just as you know, is the second and last year of the ARPA funding that we received. Fiscal year 24 revenues are down $433,000, mainly due to reduction in the ARPA funding of $438,000. So you can see the match there. That's why that is down. Other significant fiscal year 24 revenue changes are the increase in parking penalties, $36,000. The median parking revenue is projected to be flat. Rental income down $30,000, and that's really based on looking at our 23 numbers to see how things are going, and readjusting the 24 numbers. And the transfer in from the Sears Block Tax Increment Financing District is down $8,000. Regarding expenses, next page, for fiscal year 23, projected expenses are under budget by $135,000, mainly due to wages and benefits coming in under budget. Fiscal year 24 expenses are budgeted to increase by $207,000 or 6.7%, and this is driven by 5 areas: wages and benefit increases, professional service increase, as you can see as you look down, electricity, real estate tax increases, and debt service increases due to all the investments we've been making in the parking garages. Also included in this budget is additional funding for annual maintenance for an online permitting module in the amount of $15,000. An increase for online credit card transaction fees as $24,000. So the more people who use the online credit card transactions, the more the fees we have to pay. And winter parking ban impound lot operations, which we'll be setting up for $30,000. If you look at the parking pro forma, the next attachment under this item, so you go back to item number 4, looking at the parking pro forma. If you go to the bottom of the page, the first column is a revised fiscal year 23 budget for revenue and expenses, and a budgeted $400,000 gain on the projected net line near the bottom of the page. So I think you can see that $400,400. The second column, that's for fiscal year 23. The second column is the fiscal year 23 estimate. The same projected net line shows an estimated gain in fiscal year 23 of $536,000, or $136,000 better than budget. It results in an ending working capital amount of $1.5 million. Again, $438,000 of this gain is from the ARPA funding. The next column, the fiscal year 24 budget, and we are budgeting a loss of $240,000, which would decrease the ending working capital to $1.3 million. If you go to the fiscal year 25 column, there's a parking rate increase projected in 25, which we've talked about in the past. Last year, I estimated the parking rate increase would be this year in fiscal year 24, but because the fund is doing so well, I'm recommending that we push that increase off another year. That, you will also see major increases in capital expenses planned in fiscal years 25, 26, 28, and 29. Along with those capital expenses is debt service to support those projects. That's where you see those costs carried. And factoring in the stronger fund balance position again, this year and next, the projected rate increase is delayed until fiscal year 25. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Council Chaplin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did I hear you say we still have some ARPA funds in here? Or some federal relief funds? Are they still in here?
This is, the amount that we have was in the last year.
Right, so there is none in this year.
There's none in this year. That's why you see that revenue going down in '24.
Okay. Follow-up, Your Honor? Do we have any, this is tangentially related to that, Mr. Espel. Do we have any information from our congressional delegation as to whether there'll be any negative impact to us if there is a federal clawback of?
Regarding the ARPA dollars?
Yeah.
Yes, and that information is no, there is not.
Okay, good, thank you. I mean,
Those
not just on this, on our entire.
Well, if money hasn't come across to us in some funds already, then yes, there's potential for those. But those, we bring you, that's why when the whole concept of when we put together the budget, if the money isn't in hand, that's why we provide the asterisks on those projects until we're sure those funding is in place. So that, therefore, we don't move forward with it and then find out later on the federal government money disappears. But, so we've got a system in place for that.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Anyone else? Okay, airport.
So want to be on agenda item number 5. The airport fund. We'll look at revenues, and you'll want to be on page 161. For fiscal year '23, projected revenues are ahead of budget by $64,000, and that is mainly due to an increase in rental income. For fiscal year '24, budget to budget, we're up $86,000, or 22%, due to an increase in rental income and investment income. The next section of the expense budgets are down. Expenses budget are down $12,000, or 2.5%, due to wage and benefits down slightly, professional services up $11,000, electricity up $5,000, real estate taxes down $3,000, principal interest payments on debt down $7,000, and transfers out to general fund and capital is down $17,000. Also included in this budget is $5,000 for a on-call airport service retainer for services that we need. Our engineering group that we use is Jacobs Engineering. And of course, we talked about this in the past. We'd like to start funding for the Wings and Wheels event that we do, which is very well received, particularly on the Heights, for $5,000. Next, we go to the airport pro forma. So you go back to item number 5, you see the airport pro forma. Under the FY23 budget column, the airport was budgeted to lose $95,000. For fiscal year '23 estimate column, the airport is projected to gain $26,000, which will then provide an ending working capital of $355,000. The fiscal year '24 request column, the airport projects to gain $3,600 with an ending working capital of $359,000. So we make our way across the former columns by fiscal year. The ending working capital is projected to be in the negative in the amount of $208,000 in fiscal year '28. Understanding that there are a number of prospects for additional revenue growth within the next few years. Without revenue increases, the general fund will need to start supporting the airport starting in 2028. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a question about the Wings and Wheels event that we are spending $5,000. Are there other community development festivals, such as the Multicultural Festival, that we are also supporting and spending $5,000? Or are we supporting any other events?
We have supported in the past, and I left the dollars in there for the Concord Arts Fest, so which we have downtown in the fall. I think it's in September.
October.
Yes.
October. So even though they didn't want to hold the event this year, I left the money in there in case we do want to do events. So yes, we've done those in the past. But this is a new one that we're adding to the airport fund. We haven't done this in the past. So we've handled it in different ways through raising sponsorships and working with private groups.
So I'm sorry, follow up, Your Honor?
Sure.
So we've supported the Capital Arts Fest last year, or there were funds, but
Last several years.
several years, and this is, even though the Wings and Wheels has happened before, this is the first time that we're funding. Are there any other events? Are we funding the Multicultural Fest in any way? Because I know,
Yes. Yes, through, I think we waive all the fees associated with that. And there's a lot of other things that we do like that, where, and I don't have a list of them, but where what we do is we end up doing partnerships with folks and make sure, you know, so for example, we do partnerships with the Black Ice groups, and they in exchange raise funds and then make donations to the city to help offset costs and things like that. It's all very, we always try to keep it very uncomplicated and what works for those private groups.
Thank you, Ron. Mr. Manager, could you clarify, I believe the monies used to pay for the wings and wheels are actually monies from the revenues from the airport. So this is,
Right.
it's non-taxpayer dollars, it's revenue fund.
That's correct.
I'm sorry, it's airport fund
Airport
revenue.
fund, and that's why we're looking at doing it this year, because the airport is doing that well and generating these dollars. We think it's a combination of educating people about the airport, but also having something of enjoyment for the community to do and get there. It does have a very large turnout, and it does grow the reputation of the airport, which you can see, I think, as you can see, is starting to increase revenues overall, which hopefully will keep it as long as we possibly can from coming onto the general fund. That's the idea.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Conservation property?
The next item is the Conservation Property Fund, and that is, so that is item number 6, and you want to start on page 164. And this fund is designed to account for revenues from leased properties and the acquisition and management of conservation properties. The revenues in this fund are relatively stable year to year, and it is the use of the budgetary fund balance that fluctuates the most. So revenues budget are projected to increase $36,000, mainly due to an increase in the use of fund balance. Lease revenue and transfer is also increasing slightly. Expenses budget are up $36,000, as you can see that matches, or 37.6%, mainly due to the increase in the transfer outline. And this is a transfer to general fund to offset debt service costs for conservation property purchases and for the reimbursement for plowing the trailhead parking lots. Each year, we use the fund balance from the prior fiscal year as a transfer out to the general fund for this purpose. That way we know how much dollars we actually have to use. There is no pro forma for this fund. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Okay.
Next item is item number
Sorry.
7.
Well, hold on. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask if you were going to join us on the trail hike this Saturday at 9:30. Just curious.
It's going to be raining.
Item number 7, revolving loan fund. This is on page 166. This is the first year in many years that we've included the fund in the annual budget process. In the past several years, the fund has been presented to City Council as a periodic basis, so we just come in when we need to do it, when appropriations were needed to support a revolving loan. We figured it'd be better to just do it on an annual basis now. So starting in fiscal year 24 this year, we will use the estimated unexpended balance plus the scheduled loan repayments and the investment income as the requested budget appropriation. For fiscal year 24, this request is $640,000. There's no pro forma, obviously, for this fund. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions? Okay. Golf?
Okay, next item is number 8, golf. And you want to be on page 168 of the golf fund. And I start on this page so you can see how the structure is. So I'm now showing the organizational chart with the Deputy City Manager of Finance with oversight of golf. Operationally, this reporting structure has been in place for a number of years, as you know, as we've talked about. This organizational chart also lines up with the staff reporting summary, so when you look at the reporting summary in the beginning, they're all together now. And summary pages with golf as a separate category under finance. The golf course continues to be very busy and is certainly a treasured city asset. As you saw in the capital budget last week, I did not include capital funding for the clubhouse construction in fiscal year 24, instead included in fiscal year 25. If all the design work is completed during the year, I may introduce the resolution for the construction prior to fiscal year '25 budget year, but everything will need to be lined up first. The course overall is extremely busy. Playing conditions continue to be excellent. Most recent tree project has opened up the area between the 2nd and the 16th fairways, and grass is starting to grow in the newly hydro-seeded areas. I'm also pleased to report that the Pathways to Golf camp that was held during April school vacation was very successful and exceeded our expectations. We anticipated about 30 who would sign up for the session, and we ended up with 60 signups. It's a very busy few days. If you had a chance to get up there, it was great seeing all the kids up there. Everyone had a great time. Now for the budget, please go to page 170. And for fiscal year '23, total revenues are projected at $1.8 million, with increases over budget in almost every category. Fiscal year '24 budget to budget are up $145,000 with increases in every category. Next, on page 171, expenses for fiscal year '23 projected to budget are over revised budget by $150,000 due to wages and benefits higher than budget, that's $28,000. Repairs and maintenance higher than budget, $11,000. Cost of goods sold higher than budget at $82,000. League and tournament expenses higher than budget at $23,000, and vehicle fuel higher than budget at $5,000. These additional expense items were made to accommodate the additional business at the course or make necessary repairs. I'll bring a supplemental appropriation forward for fiscal year '23 to align with the actual budget. Expenses for fiscal year '24 are up $130,000 due to increased wages and benefits, the amount of $68,000, and that included the major increases we gave to seasonal staff. Department of Supplies up $5,000, auto parts up $5,000, ground and horticultural supplies up $8,000, cost of goods sold up $10,000, league and tournament up $7,000, electricity up $7,000, debt service up $17,000, and transfers to general fund and overhead $9,000. Also included in this budget as part of the increase and not mentioned above in funding is for a tree specialist work of $3,000, new range ball washer for $4,000, reconstruction of the 10th fairway forward tee for $3,000, and replacement of the rental push carts for $2,000. I'll be glad to answer any questions before I move on to the performer if you'd rather do it that way.
Sure.
Okay, so
around this way, and Councilor Credby.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. City Manager, one of the items that is in Appendix B that was recommended from the golf course that you did not accept was $15,000 in building repair maintenance. Do you have any sense of what those repairs were that we've decided not to move forward on?
it was really, I'm sure the folks who work there have a specific idea, but to me, they were just general repairs. Because so many things could go wrong with the building.
That's my follow-up is that in keeping with the council's directive that we're going to look at a new clubhouse anyhow because we weren't going to spend money on maintenance, that is just taking taxpayer money and wasting it?
Well, I think the idea is that if we make repairs that are necessary, but not spend any dollars we don't have to. So, for example, we had to replace the furnace. The furnace is $11,000. If the furnace had blown at a certain time of the year, maybe we'd hesitate a little bit. But given that it went in the middle of the winter, we had to make that $11,000. So I think the fund is such that we can make improvements if we need to make improvements that are necessary. If it's something extensive, then of course I'd come back to City Council and say, hey, we need some additional dollars to make this work. Do you want to make this improvement, or do you want to shut the clubhouse down?
Thank you. Follow-up. I was actually stunned by the numbers for the amount of sales that we've had in the pro shop. I was talking to Mr. Davis. We were all talking at the Golf Advisory Board about how the original budget was about $80,000 in sales, and now we're cresting $200,000. And it really is speaks a lot to what we are offering in the clubhouse, the product that we have, and the service that we're doing. And so my appreciation to the staff for that.
It's a good point. I think that's one of the things you see, cost of goods sold. We need to buy the goods so that we can sell them, and actually that works out well for the customer, but also the city makes a profit on that, which then helps offset costs. So you see those costs up, but there's more than offsetting revenue to cover those costs.
Thank you.
Is that? Councilor Brown.
Yes, thank you. I have a question about memberships. I'm wondering, we're looking at estimated is 415 for 2023 and projected is 4,025. When I was at the April Golf Course Advisory Committee meeting, the numbers for total memberships was 227. So I'm wondering, when do we start counting? You know, how do we determine what the numbers are for memberships?
So I usually don't use the term membership. I use season passes because that's kind of what we sell. And I think if you look at the numbers, if you go back to the mid, 2015, 2016, we had like 192, 184 season passes. And my feeling all along is what we needed to do is grow that number. And then once we got to a certain point, there's going to be where you have too many season passes, and not enough people can just walk onto the course and play because every single available, it's hard to imagine, but every single, even though you're sending a group out every 8 or 9 minutes, you just run out of time. You run out of slots for people to fill. So my thought was that when we get to, this was years ago, and I'm still holding to it, when we get to about 400, that's when we need to start taking a look at, do we have to limit how many season passes we can, and then what's the best mix of those season passes? So just from my numbers, I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't know what those numbers are from. So if you look at 2015, 2016, 2017, you're about 180 to 190 in that range. And that was a little bit low compared to the previous years, but golf was going down nationally. And again, I'm not a golfer, so this is just my reading about golf. And then COVID hit, and then when COVID hit, you started to see slight increases, and we went from 220, 250 to 300, and now we're approaching 400. My concern was that was going to level off really quickly and start going the other way, and it hasn't. I think it hasn't because golf has stayed pretty strong, but the quality of the course is so good, and the customer service is so good that I think what you see happening around the area with our competitors is they can't compete. And so what we look at, I think what we're looking at is, okay, we're going to have to, there's a couple of balancing pieces here. How many season passes can you have? And then what should you be charging? We wanted to get to the point where we grew the game, grow it to the point where then you can start having different costs and start raising the costs to have, but make sure you have a quality product. And I got to be honest, we didn't have a quality product for years, and we do have a very high quality product now.
Thank you. But my question is, when do you start counting? Like, when do you start counting the season memberships? Because the information I received from the head, Mr. Davis, was that 2023 there was 227 memberships. On the budget, it says estimated 415. So are we double counting season memberships? Is that, it says for the golf season. What is the golf season?
Well,
I know the golf course is open 360 days.
And that's why you set the rates differently than you set rates for other things, is because the season runs differently than it runs compared to the fiscal year. So the numbers you have are very different than the numbers I have for season passes.
Yeah, so I want to just understand the discrepancy.
I don't know where your 227 number comes from, I apologize, but the golf season basically starts, the outside golf season, as soon as the weather clears up enough in the spring in order for us to get out there and start playing golf. So this year, that was the beginning of April, so I think it was April 11th or 12th that we actually went out and started playing outside golf. So that's really when, for the most part, when the season starts. Now, we start selling memberships for this year. We might start selling some of those memberships in October and November, because every year we have a fall special. People can lock in the rate that's for the current year, for the following season. So that's when we kind of start counting those memberships.
In October.
And if we really look at, how many members we have, we do that right up until probably the middle to the end of June. We still are selling memberships or season passes now. And that's where we expect to be somewhere near that 400 number. We have projections that we put in here. How many do we think we're going to have? As it looks right now, we're going to be pretty close to that 400 number, give or take a few.
So if, on April 18th, when I received this email, there were 227. You expect that will,
Right, so that was how many we had at that
At that
point.
date. So you
Yeah,
think
for
we'll get
this
another
season.
almost
Now
200.
I understand the number you're talking about.
Okay.
So that's how many we had at that point for this season. But, and so you can imagine, we started playing golf the beginning of April, and that was what date? April 20th, you said?
April 18th.
April 18th, I'm sorry. So April 18th, we had 227. So since that time, the last time that I asked Phil about this number, we had 368 season passes sold, and still expecting that we were going to receive a few more from that time.
And when I checked last week, it was 366. So, and it gets to the point where you don't buy this year's pass because this year's partially over. So it's not worth the money.
Right. Follow up, Your Honor? So at that same meeting, the same April meeting, there was a conversation about how great the course was, but also that our memberships are $600 and $700 less than other courses. And I'm concerned about that because on the website it says our rates are the same no matter where you live. And I think for Concord residents who are paying debt service, paying for CIP projects, it actually costs more for Concord residents to play at Beaver Meadow than someone from Bow. And I would strongly recommend that we look at increasing rates for non-Concord residents because it is so low and because the course has changed so dramatically and Concord residents are paying for it.
And that's something that can be considered. I think the city manager may have some thoughts on that issue.
I got thoughts on everything. So, let me see. Again, I'm not sure where the numbers come from. I just have my numbers, so I have my facts. So if I look at let's look at the senior, pick any category, senior Monday through Friday category for what Beaver Meadow is for fiscal year '23, it was $11.95, and if you look at Pembroke Pines for '22 is $15.25, $15.25, $14.95. So I get about $400 or $500 difference.
I checked recently. I checked
Yeah.
more recently. Those numbers were from the fall
Right.
before they had adjusted.
Right.
So actually, Pembroke is now $19.50 for
Yeah.
seniors, and the Oaks it's $19.95. So it's closer to $800
Right.
more.
Go over, check out that clubhouse is something else. Yeah, that's why. I mean, that's what people are paying for. So I'll keep. I got other things to well.
Oh, this is
questions to-
entertaining. I'm enjoying this.
Okay.
He knows a lot about golf.
Right, I
Except for how to play.
I have constituents who call me repeatedly because they're concerned
Sure.
that there isn't a Concord resident rate, and that it's open 84 hours a week, at 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they just feel like, and we talk about the wear and tear on the course, the clubhouse, it's Concord residents who are paying for it, so they'd like to see
Yeah,
benefits.
I get it.
We can increase the rate for non-residents 500%, or not 500%, $500, and it would still be less than other places.
And you'll see rate recommendation that comes from the Golf Advisory Committee. They'll typically make that recommendation at their July meeting for the council to take into consideration.
Taking my notes.
I'm sorry.
Taking my
I
notes.
apologize. I'll let you
so-
get back.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the city council, the 50 members sitting around this table are the ones who determine the rates. Is that not correct?
That is
The
correct.
golf advisory committee does not set the rates?
Nope, just.
The manager doesn't set the rates? You don't set the rates?
sir.
These 15 elected individuals set the rates?
Yes, sir.
Well, real good job.
Thank you, Your Honor. While you're here, Mr. LeBrun, is there an opportunity right now for members or visitors to comment on the course generally or any aspects of playing golf at Beaver Meadow? So be it the pricing or conditions of the course or that kind of thing. Is there some kind of process where folks can slip a note or leave a comment with someone?
I guess we don't have a comment card box slot that, we usually accept, but I can tell you that most people are not hesitant to let us know what they think about how things are going or the conditions of the course, especially if the conditions are poor. But I will tell you that the majority of the comments that we get in the clubhouse from people who play the course, the vast majority are very pleased with the conditions of the greens, the fairways, the tee boxes, and the changes that are going on out on the course itself. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any questions based on what we've heard thus far? because you have
got
more to
more
go.
to-
I understand that, I'm just, as of thus far. Thus far,
On what was stated before, about Appendix B.
go ahead.
Thank you. I just was wondering, last budget, there was $5,000 dedicated for tree training. This year, it's tree specialist, and so between the tree specialist and horticultural, it's $10,500. I'm just wondering, is that absolutely necessary if they receive tree training, and there was $100,000 for tree removal?
So last year, what we did was we actually had a tree training segment that we worked with. We did a coordination with the General Services Group for the tree cutting. And we actually had people come in and did a specific 3-day training where they actually went out on the course, identified a number of trees that needed to be cut down, and showed all these folks, both golf course folks and the folks from General Services, great ways to be safe about cutting trees and using that as a great example. So that was one aspect of it, and that was, resounding success to working in cooperation with General Services. This year, what we have is we're going to need some specific trees removed that are beyond our scope to remove them ourselves, and that's really what that additional funding is for, in order to remove those trees that are, that we've identified as potentially being dangerous, that we want to make sure we don't injure any players or anything like that.
Just follow up on the Appendix B, the ball washer, $3,500 for a ball washer?
Holy smoke.
Yeah, it's-
$3,500.
Oh
We
my
don't have to
God.
do that, but we make about
Okay.
$90,000 a year on the driving range. So if that ball washer that we have now is about 10 or 12 years old, it's seen its better life. We've had trouble with it. If that ball washer goes down, then basically what we would have is we would have to try to either wash the balls by hand, which is a very difficult process, or we don't have the driving range. If we don't have the driving range, we lose $90,000 in revenue. That doesn't make business sense to me.
Okay, I'm going to stop it here, and you continue.
I can finish, okay. So let's go to the pro forma. I think this will answer a lot of questions here, hopefully. So if you look at the golf fund pro forma, if you go right to the projected net at the bottom of the page, under the fiscal year 23 column, projected net is a gain of $1,600. The fiscal year 23 estimate column is a gain of $164,000. So we're actually $162,000 better than budget. So when I said the course was doing well, that was an understatement. It produces an ending working capital of $731,000. For fiscal year 24, the projected net is a gain of $16,000, an ending working capital of $747,000. As we follow the ending working capital through fiscal year 28, the ending working capital remains positive through fiscal year 29. My plan is to use, approved by you, is to use a portion of the ending working capital along with the measured increase in membership and the daily fees rates as a transfer to the general fund to help offset debt services costs for the new clubhouse construction, if you so approve it. And due to the significant increase in the overall sales of season passes, I have already asked the chair of the Golf Advisory Committee to take in consideration the new clubhouse costs and if there should be a resident versus non-resident rates as they consider membership, because again, we're going to have to find some way to, if we're going to cap that rate, the membership numbers or season passes numbers, however you want to call it daily, we're going to have to find some way to stratify that. So when they meet in July, hopefully they'll take a look at that and anticipate this rate recommendation then coming back to the city council in August, as it normally does.
Thank you. Who else? Over here. Council Brown.
Thank you. I'm looking at the use of fund balance in fiscal year 23 budget, $45,000. Was that for the 10 used gas-powered golf carts?
Fund balance. That sounds right, yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, takes us to Arena. Oh, I'm sorry. So you-
It's all right. Just a quick last-minute question. What is the line item handicapping? I'm just trying to understand in the pro
That's-
forma.
That's the game. I'll have to ask Brian to.
I mean, you guys aren't betting on horses and stuff, right?
That has to do with the way that I play golf. So when you're a golfer, you have a handicap, and your handicap is based on the course. All courses have ratings, and then you have your score that you put in from each course. Whether you play 9 holes or 18 holes, you actually put it into this USGA handicapping system, and it calculates your handicap based on which course you're at, which course you're playing. So wherever you play, you're supposed to play that. And then these handicaps are used for events that you play in, or outings or tournaments. Wherever you play, people will always ask, what's your handicap? So, you hear people say, well, I have a 2 handicap. So typically, if par is 72, then there'll be a 74 player on that same, par 72. So it's a system where a leveling.
Yeah.
He has the answers for everything. A leveling mechanism.
No,
to
I
kinda
understand
make us
the,
even.
yeah, I understand the theory of handicapping. I used to work in the horse racing industry, and
It has nothing to do with betting.
I understand that, but why are there monetary figures in the pro forma?
Because when somebody signs up to have their handicap done, the course has to pay X amount of dollars to USGA for that handicapping. We charge that person.
All right.
That amount plus a small amount above that to
Okay.
make a little profit.
Thank you. I understood the concept, and I don't play golf because my handicap got up to the 5 figures. So, but I just couldn't. I didn't understand the monetary aspect. Thank you.
By the way, that was pretty impressive. I was curious how you were going to do in that. That was really good.
Pretty good.
That was all right. I even saw the pros sitting nodding back there.
Still nodding yes or no?
We're going to, Councilor Craig.
No, I'm all set.
Sorry.
I just have a question about the debt service schedule. Does that include the $150,000 that we discussed last week, that debt service, or is that not included in this pro forma?
Everything that we discussed last week is, in terms of the capital budget expenditures, would be included in here.
Is in here?
Yes.
Could you show me where that, because it looks like it's 79,000, and I thought it was 150,000.
I don't like to come up and correct the manager.
Oh, what's in it? No, I'm answering the question about, is it in here, though?
That $150,000 that we were talking about were the capital items that the general fund was supporting for the golf course, for irrigation, the
Tree removal.
pump house, things like that. So that $150,000 was included in the general fund debt service.
So that's not here?
It's not in the golf fund debt service. The golf fund debt service is mostly other equipment type purchases for the mowers, tractors, vehicles, equipment, things like that we have there.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that.
I don't mean to correct you.
No, it's good. Glad you did.
Anything else? Okay, Arena?
Okay. That's item number 9, under the Arena Fund. And you want to be on page 176. So fiscal year '23 revenues under the projected column are $30,000, or 4.2% better than budget. This is due to an increase in the pro shop and concession sales, as well as better than budget rental income. Fiscal year '24 budget, revenues budget are up $46,000, or 6.4%, due to increased pro shop and concession sales and rental income. Fiscal year '23 expenses, so if you look at the expense page, the next page, it's projected to budget are up $51,000 due to temp wages, Beneflex costs, health costs, cost of goods sold, and professional services. So as you recall, we had some improvements that we had to make, again, very much like the golf course. The building is getting old. We had to make some improvements to the fixing leaking pipes that were considerably very old. The Arena Fund also received an allocation of ARPA funds in the amount of $180,000 in fiscal year '23. The fiscal year '24 budget expenses are up $78,000, or 10.5%, and this increase is due to wage and benefit increases, professional services, cost of goods sold, electricity, and transfer out to general fund. Also included in this budget is funding for software replacement. This is for scheduling. Hockey goal replacement, and that's the software replacement was $4,000. The hockey goal replacement is $2,000, and the cost of goods sold is $10,000. Now, if you move on to the pro forma, The projected net for fiscal year '23 budget column is a loss of $23,000. In the next column, under the fiscal year '23 estimate, the projected net is a loss of $44,000, and that is due to the repair of the cold floor header, and the results in an ending working capital line of $261,000. For fiscal year '24 budget, the projected net is a loss of $55,000 and resulted in ending working capital of $206,000. As we move through the fiscal year, the ending working capital remains positive through fiscal year '27 and ends fiscal year '28 in the red. The arena fund, along with the airport fund and the golf fund, will need support from the general fund for any major capital projects that are undertaken going forward. I commend Jeff Bardwell and the arena staff who continue to do a great job with this operation. They're always looking for positive solutions to issues and opportunities and have kept the arena going through some difficult times. Be glad to answer any questions.
Those questions? All the questions about golf, nothing with the arena?
I'll ask a
That's
question.
great.
Could you tell me what the differential rate is for non-residents at the arena?
I could not. I'd have to ask Jeff Bardwell to go for
Is
it.
there one?
I don't believe so, but
I don't believe so either, but thank you.
Thank you for asking. Okay.
What's the answer? Is there a differential rate for citizen, Concord resident, no differential rate?
Thank you.
Anybody
Thank you, Your
else?
Honor.
Okay.
So we had 33,000 people use the rounds played at the golf course, but we only have 11,000 people skating, free skating, so it's not used very much, huh?
I think it's something, Concord is something for everybody.
Okay, all right, cool. Continue.
Middle of everywhere.
Continue.
Next is solid waste fund. So for solid waste fund, you want to be on item number 10, and you'll want to be on page 181. So for fiscal year '23, projected column, revenues are projected to be down $39,000. So commercial disposal sales are short of budget by $288,000. Of course, that's based on tonnage. Downtown solid waste district revenues are up $58,000. Pay-as-you-throw bag revenues are up $127,000, and pay-as-you-throw container revenue is up $62,000. For fiscal year '24, budget revenues are up $607,000 due to the proposed increase in pay-as-you-throw bag prices, which would be a 28% recommendation, so that's $328,000 for the bags. Pay-as-you-throw containers up, if you bring them up the same amount, that'd be up $137,000. School district payments, again, the same amount would be up $18,000. And the transfer in from, regardless of that, the transfer in from the general fund would be increasing by $100,000. Next, on page 182, expenses for fiscal year '23 budget to budget are flat. Fiscal year '24 budget expenses are up $177,000 due to wage and benefit increases, professional services contractual increases, that's our contracts for solid waste, obviously, and transfer to capital $50,000, and that's really for the landfill maintenance. So, of course, under the solid waste fund is all the management, all the landfills are also underneath there. So we encompass everything under solid waste. And then if you go to the pro forma, the projected net line at the bottom of this page shows a fiscal year '23 budgeted loss of $231,000. Of course, you did that because you had a very healthy working capital balance. The estimate for fiscal year '23 is a loss of $269,000, or $38,000 worse, and results in the ending working capital of $2.5 million. And that other service revenues on disposal are projected to be short about $288,000. For fiscal year '24 budget, the projected net line is a gain of $199,000. This results in an ending working capital of $2.7 million, and this gain is a result of an increase in the pay-as-you-throw bag costs, containers in school, direct revenues of 28% if you make that approval. Under this proposal, pay-as-you-throw bags would increase to $1.60, for small bags $3.20, for large bags, as we discussed earlier. The pro forma anticipates some major changes starting in fiscal year '25, so this is probably the most important pro forma that you're going to see tonight. The fiscal year '25 is the first year of the new solid waste contracts. These anticipated changes include a loss of revenue due to projected rescinding of the flow control ordinance. So that's a negative $1,388,000, along with corresponding reduction in expenses of $1,328,000. The projected increase in the transfer in from the general fund is $606,000. So the general fund, again, property taxes are going to increase, transfer to here is going to increase by $606,000, at least as proposed. Under the expenses for fiscal year '25, there's an increase for disposal and collection contracts of $693,000, an increase in recycling and processing for $486,000. The working capital remains positive in the remaining out years, including another pay-as-you-throw increase of 15% if you stay with the pay-as-you-throw system adjustment in fiscal year '28. Also keep in mind that in fiscal year '25 will be the starting of the pilot program for the automated collection system using the toters. It will be necessary for the Solid Waste Advisory Committee and City Council to study how the solid waste operations are financed with toter collection. I commend the good effort and the work of the General Services and the Solid Waste Advisory Committee has done securing the new solid waste contract and disposal and recycling agreements to move the city forward for the next 10 years. There have been enormous changes in the solid waste recycling business. The city has enjoyed a very favorable contract through its hard work and good contract negotiations over the past 10 years and reaped many financial benefits from this great agreement. Now we're moving into a very solid agreement that is more in line with what all the other communities in the current market conditions. I'd say great job to everybody over the last 10 years. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
What's questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. This time we'll open the public hearing on any one of the special revenue funds, parking, airport, conservation property, revolving loan, golf, arena, solid waste. Who would like to testify? Mr. Swiker. Good evening.
Good evening, mayors and city managers. I'm Roy Schweiker. And of course, you know, by letting the city manager talk so long without intermeeting hearings, that means I get to talk longer without putting all the hearings together at once. So let's start off with the parking fund. I am still concerned that many years ago, the last time we had a consultant, it was universally agreed that Main Street parking should cost more than other places because it was more valuable. And we still haven't done that. The first excuse was, oh, we're rebuilding downtown, so that's a hassle, we shouldn't do it. And then we should, oh, it's a pandemic, we shouldn't do it. But I mean, I don't think we should wait another year to increase the parking fees on Main Street. It's more valuable to park on Main Street than elsewhere. Ask anyone and they'll tell you that. And we should be collecting that money instead of essentially using property tax dollars, laundering it through the TIF district, and using the property taxes to pay for parking that should be paid for by downtown parking people. And yes, the stores may benefit from cheaper parking rates, but why are we giving this benefit to downtown as compared to the Heights and Pennacook and other places where there may be merchants that don't get this benefit? And I will remind you that Concord has the lowest median family income and per capita income of nearly anywhere in this entire county. The median family income in Bow is like 20% higher than Concord. It's 50% higher in Hopkinton. Half of the people parking downtown, based on the tickets issued, are from out of town. So once again, it's the locals through property taxes are paying to subsidize these out-of-towners. We need to quit doing that. We need to raise the rates for parking on the downtown Main Street meters this year, right away. And the second thing has to do with the parking officers. Once again, you know, we seem to have trouble hiring parking officers. I told you so now because of what I told you last year. I said that making the job harder to fill by making them be a meter technician in addition is only going to make it harder, and making them all full-time is not going to do the way you think. And I think I've been proven right. You can't fill those jobs. But for instance, you have a trails ranger who would not take a full-time job where he'd lose his pension, but is apparently a very good person to hire part-time. You might get similar good people as parking officers who might be retired state employees or law enforcement who might take a part-time parking officer job but don't want to do it full-time and lose their pension. So I think you need to look at maybe offering some of those parking jobs as part-time again. The second thing is, I think once again, you may remember this when I tell you that instead of having the parking officials downtown walk around in police uniforms. Let them wear a white costume with a red sash, call them downtown ambassadors, let them hand out maps of the city, and, try and be friendly to people. In addition to checking on meters, you might get a whole different group of people who were customer service oriented and friendly, instead of people that knew how to fix parking meters. And then you might not have such a hard time filling these jobs. So, anyway, I guess that's it for parking. Now we'll go to rental of city open space. We really need a city campground. We cannot have people camping randomly in city parks and murdering hikers and stuff. We need to get this organized and have a campground, have genuine solid waste disposal, have genuine management, and furthermore, charge the people there on a sliding scale basis what they can afford, instead of just letting anybody camp anywhere they want to. And I think that this would be a benefit for the people that are struggling, because they would have a legitimate place to camp. It would be a benefit for the other users of city property who don't have to run into homeless people camping all over in city parks. And it's a way forward, and I think it's something we need to look into. Okay, golf. And I'm going to say the same thing that one of our counselors has said, that I don't understand why ordinary residents of the city are paying to subsidize golfers, many of whom come from out of town, and once again have much higher incomes than the people that are having to subsidize them. In particular, I think if this is one of the statistics that don't appear in budget hearings but appear in golf newsletters, is golfers on average have higher income than ordinary people. So why are the ordinary people being forced to subsidize them? And last year, I had a woman ask me, she is always saying what a fine engineering job her husband has, and she has fine jobs herself, whereas my state pension, the entire thing is gone between paying my property taxes and my utilities. Fortunately, I don't have a mortgage, but I have to have money to cover food and cars and stuff like that. And so why is this woman asking me to subsidize her grounds of golf? So we need to start getting into that. We need to charge the out-of-towners more. If you look up back, we have the Parks and Recreation brochure, and nearly every activity that Parks and Recreation has charges like $10 more for out-of-town people. We charge $10 more for a round for golf out of town, 100, 200 more for a, what do you call the memberships, the non-memberships?
Season passes.
Okay, season pass, 100, 200 more for them. And the thing is, if you're really running into a problem with selling 400 memberships and people not being able to go out and play golf, I would say maybe it's time to discourage some of the out-of-town people from playing, so the in-town people can go play on their own golf course. So that would be an additional benefit. Once we're starting to get to that number, let's charge the out-of-town people more so our local people can play. Okay, where are we now? Solid waste. Oh, great fun. So it has never really been explained to the public whether the 28% raise in purple bags that's being proposed for this year is to cover this year's budget or to build a cushion for when the huge increase comes next year. I think that that's something that you need to put out in publicity as compared to just, we're going to charge 28% now, then who knows when we'll raise it again, blah, blah, blah. I think this needs to be explained. I think that something no one has caught on to yet, my understanding is that under the new contract, we will be paying as much for recycling as we're paying for disposal of genuine trash, depending on whether there's any value to the recycled stuff. And when I go around and look at the recycle bins, which are presently mostly open-top containers, I think half of the recycle bins in the city contain contaminants. And, I'm not an expert on this, but I think it would be nice if somebody did a study on that. What % of our recycle bins contain contaminants? And as soon as we have to start paying for recycling, are we going to be, paying the full amount because they're rejecting all of the city recycle because it's contaminated? It's only going to get worse when it's hidden in the flip tops compared to out in the open. So I think that should be part of the education process for this year. Let's study the recycling, see what contaminants are there, and find out what's going on. And lastly, the information we're getting from General Services is still, there's only one size of container that residents can pick for disposal, and a huger size for recycling. And I know some people feel those are too large. I'm not gonna have them on my property. I've got no place to keep them inside. Outside, they'll just be in the way, tree branches will fall on them, I'll back into them. I'll just take my stuff up to the transfer station every month. I don't want those giant containers around. If you start trying to charge me for having them if I don't use them, I'll fill them up with snow. That's the only way to get rid of the snow the city pushes up on the sidewalk. So why can't we start talking now to Casella about, can't we have an option for smaller containers before they go out and order only one size? You know, I don't know what the lead time in those containers is, but we need to talk now and not next year. Okay, I think I've almost made it to the end. I assume nobody has any questions.
Any questions? I have one. I'm really curious. So where do you want to put the campsite?
Well, you see, I'm not an expert on the city properties. I would say that that's something that the
I'm assuming
Conservation
you've
Commission
you've
others-
identified something, though.
I have not.
Okay.
I mean, the place I might pick is this an area that's not presently conservation property, which is what you call Gully Hill. That's convenient to services, and it's not, you know, a remote place that people necessarily go hiking. But if people have huge objections to that, then pick somewhere else. But I think having a managed campsite will,
No, I understand the concept, what you're saying. I'm just curious if you identified a site. Other than Gully Hill, that's where you're thinking about where you put the campsite?
well, I mean, there are places that, you know, might be more out of the way, but, you know, let's say you put it up in, near Hoyt Road Marsh somewhere. You know, sure, that'd be great, except I don't think you'd get many customers.
No, I'm just curious. I thought you might, since you suggested, I thought you might have an idea where to put people, so. Anyone else have any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. Anyone else wish to testify? Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm just going to focus on the solid waste disposal fee through General Services. So, as you all know, we're going from, we've been told often enough, we're going from $0 per ton for recycled materials for the past decade, which no doubt was a good deal. So compliments to both General Services and a stroke of good luck. And now we're going to $100 per ton for disposal at the same rate as, basically, as trash. The duration of that $100 per ton, I have not been able to decipher from reading the material, but it would be nice if we could be better informed on that. So the city benefited from the current 10-year contract. Casella is understandably saying, as a corporate entity, okay, the next decade, now it's our turn. The recycling market, as we all know, basically it's in shambles. A lot of it has to do with contamination from plastics. It has a ripple effect, even through processing plants, and there's a lack of a market for recycled products. So some of us, myself particularly, is not convinced that single stream will remain in our forested in the future for decades to come. I believe in time it will go to dual stream for better separation and improved recycling rates, less contaminants. And it would be nice if we had a kickback in this present, in the next contract for the decade, that Casella hopes to, they're going to charge us $100 a ton, but should they be successful, should we have the incentive to improve our recycling rates, whatever they get, can we get 10% as a kickback, 20%? It would be an incentive to the citizenry at large to do better. And so in taking that long view, and we have, again, taken a long view because we're going to go with another 10-year contract. What I want to keep that in mind is recycling rates and contaminants. So how do we maintain and improve on recycling rates, education, and how do we basically foster a need for people in the public to say, the hell with it, I'm not going to bother? Because if we're going to pay the same per ton for recycle, why bother? That's a valid thing right now. Why bother? So I want us to get in a habit, a good habit. So what I'm questioning is the cost increase on the bag fees. I do not question higher costs. I accept that. I'm not going to get into the Excel spreadsheets. I just didn't have the time. But costs will go up, and so with that, they're proposing that the fees on the bags go up. I understand. But I feel it will get us out of the habit. It will diminish our incentive to improve recycling rates. And on that basis, I would suggest that we freeze, excuse me, freeze the bag rate at the current rate of $2.50. Because right now we're basically, it's a seesaw. We're at a fulcrum. And in that fulcrum, I think would be a tipping point for the public at large to say, again, to develop a poor attitude, the heck with recycling, our rates are going up. But you already all know that $2.50 a bag does not go over well. And we're going to change this to $3.20? Nah. So you be upfront, you tell the public it is going to cost more, we have a choice. We increase the bag fees or we raise the amount coming out of general fund, and I'm an advocate of being honest and telling them the differential is going to come out of the general fund because we want to maintain good habits, try to improve on recycling rates, diminish contaminant loads. That's basically it. We've all emphasized education as part of this process going forward. I found a memo today, interestingly, from October of 07 that I sent to General Services suggesting that when you, Jim, were, I believe, running for office with a fellow by the name of Rogers, 07, Rogers. Apparently on the campaign trail, recycling rates were an issue, so I suggested some avenues how to improve that. One of them was education. Two was to go to an actual separation and processing facility and do an audit, as I have suggested earlier, and show people what they're doing wrong now and how to improve it. So that's basically it. Education we need to ramp up. I suggested that we have a booth at market days to display the toters. I agree with some comments about they might be too large, but I don't know if that's going to be done. But we need to get on this. Even though there's a 2-year pilot, yes, I'm all aware of that. But it would be prudent to start now. But again, keep our habits, not let them get worse. Keep the bag fee at $2.50 and tell people the rest is going to come from the general fund. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Questions?
Anybody? Tina, appreciate you taking time. Anybody else like to testify? Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing and we'll move on to our enterprise funds, water and wastewater.
Nice to hear all the Dance Academy children. Okay, agenda item number 11 is your next item. That's the water fund. And starting on page 187. On page 187, fiscal year '23 revenues projected to actual are up $171,000 due to water usage is up by $52,000, utility investment fee is up by $63,000, and investment income is up by $52,000. For fiscal year '24 revenues, budget to budget are up $427,000 due to the suggested rate increase, which would bring you $329,000. The availability increase to $54,000 and investment income up $47,000. If you go to page 188, expenses for fiscal year '23 projected to budget are up $115,000, mainly due to chemical cost increases. So the chemicals increased during the year. We had to pay additional costs for those, but we didn't come back and ask for additional dollars. We tried to make it work within the budget. So that's a $119,000 increase for fiscal year '23. Expenses for fiscal year '24 budget to budget are up $469,000 or 6.6%. And there are several pieces here. So you have wages and benefit increases for the contracts. You have professional services up by $41,000. So this is really a kind of a wash. You're going to see postage and envelopes are moved from office supplies to professional services. So professional services up, professional office supplies is down, and they pretty much offset each other. Communications is down $7,000. Office supplies is down $38,000. Chemicals, again, now this is the full year of the chemical increases that we're seeing, are up $225,000. Electricity is up $56,000. Interest expense is down $40,000, so down $40,000. Transfers out to the general fund for overhead is up $36,000, and transfers to capital is up $16,000, and that's combined general and water. Also included in the budget, additional professional development funding, again, training, $3,000, and additional department supplies funding of $4,000. And if you go to the pro forma, we can always come back to any of those items if you wish. Fiscal year '23 budget projected net is a loss of $480,000. So that's what we budgeted, $480,000 loss. The estimated for fiscal year '23 is a loss of $424,000. So we did $56,000 better than budget. And this provides for an ending working capital of $3.3 million. Fiscal year '24 request calls for the water rate increase and provides for a loss of so with the water rate increase is a loss of $522,000, and this results in an ending working capital of $2.8 million. As we go across to the out years, the pro forma is calling for rate increases of 5 and 6 to 6.5%. Debt service costs for capital is the large driver in the rate increases. That's really what this is going for, is capital. Ending working capital in fiscal year '29 is consistent with the target working capital goal. So that's what we're looking at. We're trying to make those numbers come pretty close in '29. The last attachment is, if you go back to the other page, you're going to see a fiscal year '24 water rate comparisons. And these are the communities you've asked us to compare ourselves to. And both the blue and the orange bars for Concord leave us third lowest rate compared to these communities. The orange bar includes the 4.5% rate increase recommendation for the average property owner using 8 cubic feet, 100 cubic feet essentially. The water portion of their bill will increase by $1.12 a month. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Who has questions on the water fund? Seeing none, go ahead.
Next, you'll want to go to item number 12. Item number 12, the wastewater fund. You want to start on page 192. On page 192, you see revenues in the fiscal year '23 projected column are expected to be $248,000 better than budget. Sewer usage revenue is down $412,000. Sewer usage charged to other towns is up $26,000. Leachate processing is up $275,000. Septage processing is up $175,000. Utility investment fee is up $31,000. Again, these are all revenues. Investment income is up $88,000. Other revenues are up $36,000, and the share of debt service from the state is up $33,000. For fiscal year '24, revenues budget to budget are up $720,000, or 7.4%. So the sewer usage fee would bring in $234,000. The fixed charges would be up $92,000. Leachate processing is up $125,000. Septage processing is up $100,000. Investment income is up $88,000. The share of debt service, again, from the state of New Hampshire, is up $80,000. Now, if you go to page 193, you'll see the other side of it, the expenses. Fiscal year '23 expenses budget to budget are down $66,000. For fiscal year '24, expenses budget to budget are up $1.3 million, or 13.7%, due to several factors here. We got the wage and benefit increase for the contracts. We get repairs and maintenance, $10,000. Professional services, again, same thing with the postage and envelope supply. So office supplies are down $38,000, but professional services up $31,000. Bond costs are down $30,000. Office supplies are down $38,000, as I mentioned. Department supplies are up $6,000. Chemicals to both plants. Again, we have two plants. I think it's just us and Portsmouth have two plants. The chemical increases to run those plants are up $261,000. Electricity to run the two plants are up $198,000. Debt service, because of all the investments that we're making in the facilities, are up $566,000. The transfer to the general fund is up $103,000, and the transfer to capital projects is up $21,000. I've also included several program change requests in this budget. Rebuilding the chemical containment berms, so these are the berms around the chemicals that we hold at the plant for safety purposes. We're rebuilding those, $35,000. And additional funds for repairs and maintenance for both plants at $9,000. And then if you move to the pro forma, the projected net line under the fiscal year '23 budget shows a gain of $490,000. The projected net for fiscal year '23 estimate gain is $805,000. So we budgeted that would come in with a gain of $490,000. It's coming in at actually $805,000. So we did $315,000 better than budget. That's what our estimate is going to be. This results in an ending working capital of $6.6 million. For fiscal year '24 request column, the project net is a loss of $65,000 and includes a proposed wastewater rate increase. This results in an ending working capital of $6.6 million. If we follow the pro forma to the out years, the rate increases of 5.75 and 7%. Under the capital line, you'll see substantial capital projects proposed in the out years, which result in greatly increased debt service costs, which is why we're carrying this balance, this large balance in the working capital line to help offset other rate increases. So in the out years, which result in greatly increased debt service costs and expenses for the fund, which are driving the rate increases. In order to mitigate a portion of the rate increase, I'm projecting to lengthen the bond repayment from 20 years to 25 years for the Heights wastewater infrastructure projects, which we discussed at the last week's capital presentation. With the lengthened debt service payments and the working down a portion of the ending working capital balance, the rate increases are kept at 7% through and under through fiscal year 2029. This results in an ending working capital balance in fiscal year '29 that is on par with the target working capital balance of $1.7 million. And before we move to answer any questions, if you go to the last item, you can see the fiscal year '24 sewer rate comparisons. Again, same communities you asked us to take a look at. City's wastewater rate is the fourth lowest of the comparison communities. The orange bar includes the 5% rate increase for the average property owner using 8 CCF. Water, this is $2 per month. Be glad to answer any questions.
Councilor Hennessy.
Thank you. I have kind of two questions that are interrelated. In looking at the revenue numbers for the sewer usage, it looks like the projected number for 2023 is going to be about $400,000 less than we anticipated. So question number one is, do we know what was driving that? And then question number 2 is, we're still budgeting in 2024 that it's going to go up to 7.2, and I'm wondering, why do we think that sewer usage is going to go up?
I'd ask Dan to, or whoever General Services designates, probably Jeff works a lot on the pro formas, Mr. Hoadley. A lot of it really has to do with, of course, if you're not making the water sales, you're not making the sewer sales too, so, but, nope, sorry, let me get out of your way there.
Evening, gentlemen.
Hi, how are you?
Dan Driscoll and Jeff Hoadley.
I think that the short answer to your question, sir, is that the revenue from water and wastewater, with the wastewater, they don't get the benefit of any revenue because of irrigation that occurs. If we take a look back at the weather we had last summer, it would have been July and August timeframe. That's why there's a big delta between what you would have expected for water versus wastewater.
And just follow up. So is the expectation that we think that will get the benefit of that this year, and that's why we're projecting this increased revenue?
Well, the revenue we expect for '24 is based upon that 5% increase.
Okay. So it's really the rate increase that's driving that, not
Correct.
usage.
That's
Okay.
correct. And we base most of our predictions on about 20 years worth of data. So we're trying to level out that hump in the snake, so to speak. But I mean, we do the best we can as far as the predictions for consumption.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Brown?
I'm sorry, Counselor Fennessy just reminded me. I had a question about irrigation and the billing. Currently, people are receiving 2 bills if they also irrigate, is that correct?
There are 2 separate line items on their utility bill. One will be for water that's actual domestic water. And if there's an irrigation line, that's a separate meter. And so there would be 2 separate lines.
Is it possible to get those in the same envelope? Because
They are.
There.
Oh,
It's
all right.
same bill, 2 lines.
Okay, because I had somebody tell me that he received 2 separate envelopes, and he was concerned, it's 60 cents an envelope, and, so I was just bringing that forward.
I don't have an irrigation account, but I've seen bills that actually have 2 separate lines on the bill.
Just follow up. Is irrigation, it's cheaper to irrigate than it is for domestic water?
We keep track of the irrigation because that portion of the bill doesn't get charged the wastewater portion.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Gentlemen, thank you, appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
I knew I'd get you up here eventually.
Get them up here eventually.
Any other questions with wastewater?
And it's the water bill.
You all set? All right, this time we'll open the public hearing on wastewater or the water fund.
No, because
Anyone
you
wish to
don't
testify? Mrs. Swiker.
paying only for the water. It's 2 lines on that bill, the separate line is sewer.
The person I talked to said he got 2 envelopes.
We always get 2 envelopes. Every house gets 2 envelopes.
Hello again, everybody. I'll make this quick. I've got 2 issues about this. Number one, I understand that if people don't pay their water and sewer bills, then the city may have to borrow money or may lose revenue and so forth. But right now, we charge 1.5% per month for unpaid balances on the water and sewer bills. And that works out to about 20% annual rate. I mean, I think if you don't pay your income tax, you have to pay like 7%. So I think 20% is outrageous. You know, that's what loan sharks would charge. So we really need to cut the rate for people that don't pay down to a more rational level. And, I mean, they do the same thing on credit card, and they say, well, that's to cover the people that never pay. But the point is, I'm not sure why the people that pay late are the only ones that should be covering the people that never pay. You know, shouldn't that be everybody? So I think we need to cut that down. I think 0.5% a month would probably be adequate, but certainly 1%. There's no reason to justify 1.5%. If you had an ethics committee, they'd be on the case about something like that. And the second issue is we learned a couple of city council meetings ago, the city can get grants for $500,000 for water and wastewater equipment, but the city hasn't been applying for them. So I would hope that in future years, the city would apply for those grants for the water and wastewater, so therefore there'd be less money coming out of the general taxpayers. Then I'm going to go out of order for a minute, which I did deliberately, about parking. If you want to know how poorly the parking enforcement is done outside of hours in neighborhoods, if you were to head north on North State Street when you leave here, across Center Street, you would see a vehicle parked there that I would say everyone would call a commercial vehicle. It's too long to fit in the space, it's 8 feet tall, it's got all this fancy lettering on it, and it never gets a ticket, even though commercial vehicles are not supposed to be parking overnight. I mean, that's a problem we have with parking, it's just not enforced. You know, once you get outside of Main Street and once you get outside of the 7 o'clock, so go up North State Street and see this vehicle. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Seeing none, appreciate it. Anybody else wish to testify? Water, wastewater? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Manager? I assume that concludes your presentation tonight?
It does.
Okay. So, we have generally completed everything we've set out to do. We meet again on Monday, June 5th. I'll remind everyone that we have a work session starting at 5:30, and then there's been notice that immediately following the Finance Committee, we will move to the regular City Council meeting, and we'll have hearings on the budget. So if you know of anybody wishing to share their thoughts and testify, please strongly encourage them to come Monday the 5th to share their thoughts with us regarding the budget. That will be the last opportunity before we take action. The work session prior to is an opportunity for us to discuss what we've heard and to make adjustments and changes, or suggested if we wish, then to be taken up during the regular budget. So, and it'd be great if you have anything in advance. It might be worth your while. You obviously don't have to, but it might be worth your while to work with the administration to help so that they will put together the pro formas like they always do at the end, so we know exactly what the effect is of changes if we make any. So, Mr. Manager, do you have any last minute comments?
No, if anybody from the public watching at home sends anything in, we'll make sure that gets to you as we sent them out today. The different emails, you saw a lot of the skateboard park people did a lot of good background work and sent a lot of, you probably got a dozen or so of those today. So we'll continue to do that right up until the meeting.
Anybody have anything else before we adjourn from the meeting? Okay. Council Todd moves we adjourn, seconded by Council Nyan. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you much.